Hi, I'm Andy Jacobs with Accurex.
And I'm Brett Kroening from Boelter. Andy and I have had a dialogue today about holistic approaches to design of food service venues. We'd like to show you a few of the videos from that today.
Thank you for taking time out of your day today and joining us. You think about different types of world health concerns that happen, at different times through the decades, and how that can affect, just whether it's comfort of staff, if the staff and even the patrons of a place, if they have to, say if they have to wear a mask, or if you have to wear gloves or shields in some kind of case, just to make sure that nothing is going to be contaminated, right? And you can still have these different operators, still making a living doing what they're doing, but they having to take so many different precautions.
Right. Any health concern related items are probably adding things to your body, right? In some cases, you're wearing gloves, you're wearing a mask, potentially you're wearing hats for hair control, you're wearing maybe beard covers, things like this, right? They're all bundling you up, right? In an environment that potentially is pretty hot already, other than when you're in the walk-in cooler or something, but it's hot everywhere in that cooking environment, right? So, right, how do we control that, right? We want to talk about how we're keeping that kitchen space that in years past was pretty neglected, right? I mean, it was get the smoke and heat, that's directly above the cooking equipment out, but if it's 100 degrees in the kitchen, it's not really a problem. Because it's 150 degrees right by the range or right by the oven.
Exactly, right.
But that's really not fair to the operator, right? And I know that Accurex has done some things to try to sort of make that a much more comfortable environment, regardless of if you're bundled up with products to help protect. Just in general, we're worried about that ambient temp, right?
It's more of a shift of actually being comfortable in the space, and maybe even going farther than just bringing in air and using just along like a supply plenum of a kitchen hood, right? So we look at different types of units like a DOAS unit, so like a dedicated outdoor air system. So that's going to fully temper that air, so it's gonna take care of heating needs when you need that, or there's a call for that. Complete cooling, and so complete cooling and tempering so we're talking complete humidity control as well. So
throughout the entire building.
So that can be the entire building. That can be where your patrons are. That can be in your back of house if that's where your kitchen is. Keeping everybody comfortable, cool, and I think that's kind of the biggest thing.
And that's going to potentially eliminate the air handler that would replace an air handler and a makeup air unit. It basically is one unit that's covering all those needs for both kitchen ventilation makeup, to where it's ramping up and down with the hood, turning on and off for exhaust needs. But it's also handling the tempering of the space in general.
It absolutely
There's got to be a cost savings to that.
It absolutely can. So it kind of like in some of our other design conversations, it kind of comes down to what the holistic look of the space, right? What do those different players want from an architectural standpoint, from a mechanical engineering standpoint, but you hit it on the head. You absolutely can. It can take care of everything in the space, and then it can even be that unit that's going to be running just like an air handling unit would be, where you're going to have more of an unoccupied times too. So that's going to be continually running through the night. But one of the big things, when you think about the health and safety of both the people that are going to be coming in to say just a regular restaurant, or even your staff is bringing in more of that fresh outside air, and having it really be fully, whether it's fully tempered and fully filtered too. So those are some big things there. And then but there's times where maybe that's not completely needed, and you're still going to use an actual makeup air unit. And so that could either be, heat only, like we talked about before, depending on the climate, or it can be heat and cooled. So, in an area where we are in Wisconsin, I think a bigger prevalence of packaged cooling is going on to some of those makeup air units.
Yeah, certainly in the past it wasn't so prevalent. You used to mention cooling, and clients and engineers and others would sort of like their eyes would get real big and they'd be very surprised. But anymore, right? It's not as tough of a conversation. I don't know what's changed, but
it seems like that is also one of those things that if it's not thought about early on, it's it's definitely thought about in those, couple of months maybe of summertime when it gets
definitely.
really hot,
Yeah.
and then
And the humidity level, right? I mean, there's
you
just so
realize-
much latent moisture in the air. You're pushing that warm, moist air in, and it feels even hotter than it would if it was at least dry air.
And as we're having, historically we've been having more and more, higher heat summers, colder winters. I think that's becoming more of a big issue for people, and especially even just the comfort of your staff, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's one of the big things that we like to strive for with our Accurex makeup air units, especially when we look at packaged cooling, is that the owners, the operators are going to get what they pay for, right?
Yep.
So it's actually going to cool when it needs to, right? It's going to, it doesn't have to get to a really high heat for that to already kick in. It's going to kick in when you actually want that. When once it starts to, probably before it even gets uncomfortable, right, for you. If you're going to hit that 75 degrees, and then you can have your cooling kick on, right?
Yeah.
So like I think about what I do, in my own home, and that's kind of around that temperature range, right? So you want to keep it comfortable there, but maybe not go over in abundance. Maybe it's not needed. Maybe based off of the project. It's laid out with different air handling units or different types of transfer air. So a DOAS unit may not be that specific
Sure.
that specific customer's need, but the next one maybe it is, and so it's one of those things that we try to look then at our complete system solution. So that's when we think about that, it's going to be everything from basically the ceiling, the kitchen hood ceiling, on up to the exhaust, to the makeup air, DOAS, however you're going to have that supply. But then even interconnecting between the hood and that exhaust fan. So, that's when we look at that prefabricated ductwork.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think we may have touched a little bit of that on the, holistic design side of things too, where that, the prefabricated ductwork, it's kind of taking the place of some of that field fabricated welded stuff that has a potential to leak. There's always a little bit more of a potential for like a fire hazard, right? So we think about some of those safety concerns, from a cleaning standpoint, from a general maintenance for those owner operators. They need to clean those things, and just want to make it so much easier for them.
Yeah.
And then
joints, better cleanouts.
Right,
Definitely.
right. And so geez, we talk about the in between the hood and the fan, ease of cleaning that. Where does it all start, right? We talked a little bit about charbroiling and how much smoke and grease and everything that comes into there. One piece to the puzzle is there is cleaning and maintenance, right?
No question.
With everything, with an appliance underneath the hood, but also with the filters, right?
Yeah, especially if we're talking about a high efficiency extractor filter like your filters, where we're pulling a lot of that heavy globule grease out of the air.
Absolutely.
Well, it's going somewhere, right? It's going to the grease cup and it's collecting on the surface of that filter.
Yeah. So having the ease of that, being able to easily take those filters down, whether it's with some sort of filter removal tool,
right.
That's available, and being able to take those off, either completely rinse them off, throw them through the dishwasher, just one of those things that just simple little maintenance like that can make a world of difference for just general operation. And then, really coming back to some of those operating costs. You touched on it perfectly, I think, too, with those grease extractors. Those are those higher efficiency extractions. So we want to try to eliminate a lot of that grease going up through the ductwork and going up to the exhaust fan, because then you're going to have a longer longevity of that unit itself. But even when it gets up there's a grease trap on that exhaust fan that's going to collect any grease that's coming up there, and then fully hinged design for that exhaust fan to have just such an ease of cleaning it.
Sure.
When it comes time to clean the ductwork, clean the exhaust fan, it's kind of just one of those things of that complete solution. Just trying to make things so much easier instead of when things are kind of pieced together, it's kind of harder to be able to dictate what some of those things are, right?
Yeah, and if it's easy, it's a lot easier to train someone on it when it's simple, as opposed to when it's complex and difficult.
Yeah.
I think the same details apply to your makeup airs or DOAS units as far as filter changes and things like that.
Yeah.
For supply air, right? Because you are filtering that air that's coming in. but it's just as easy and just as simple and intuitive to change those filters as anything else. Right?
Yes, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. Yeah. You know, it really is just as easy as, you know, basically changing out, you know, your furnace filters in those types of units. Yeah. And a lot of times it's the same style of filter, you know, for those types of things.
Great.
And, you know, you kind of mentioned again, like the DOES and the makeup air units, you know, when we talk about, you know, kind of that complete system solution, you know, everything kind of comes down to how is everything controlled, right? Yep. So you can have every single piece correct, but if it's not controlled in the right way, you know, it can still not work very well, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So within Accurex, we actually have a controls platform for our demand control ventilation that makes it so much easier for the installing contractors to get something up and running.
The controls, right?
Yeah, right.
So on controls, right? There's been some innovations.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it kind of that rounds out that complete system solution, right?
Sure.
So you know, you can have all these different pieces, but you need them to be controlled. You need them to work together. So, you know, yeah, we've had some different things going on with our controls lately. So both on a demand control ventilation standpoint, but then a constant volume as well. We're actually using a very similar platform for both sides. So we're using a printed circuit board now, which is going to actually eliminate a lot of that wiring that needs to be done, whether it was from the factory or out in the field too.
And you're talking about the control wiring. It used to be to a toggle switch, right? So it was 120 volts or some sort of a voltage that was running through that, whereas now it's probably some sort of a Cat 6, Cat 5 cable.
Yeah, so we're using a Cat 5 cable from our control panel to our user interface that's going to be the same regardless of if you're doing constant volume or if you're doing variable volume. You know, completely touch screen, so
sort of
you know,
like
you
a phone.
Yep.
Almost.
Yep.
The screen of the same type. Where
Absolutely.
Icons that come up and the screen changes as you press on things.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, so you know, and just as you know, we want to try to make it as easy as we can for the owner operators too. So you know, really when they come into the kitchen, they can walk in, press on for lights, press on for the system. So that's going to turn on your exhaust and your makeup air or DOES or however you're going to be supplying that air into the space. That's going to turn that on too. So because you know it's going to have the code compliance, you know, already built into it. So you're going to interlock your exhaust fan and your supply with that operation because you don't want to. You don't want to have one without the other, right? Because your system's not going to work.
Balance properly, right?
Yeah, it's not going to work properly. It's not going to be, you know, capturing that charbroiler smoke that's picking up there, and then essentially, you know, everything that you've put in isn't going to, you know, work properly.
Right. Yeah. I love how it's the same across all the platforms. Just because, in some instances, we'll have a design where, you know, we'll have DCV in one operation, potentially an operation that's for banqueting or something, right? We'll have DCV control. But then maybe the short order line, in a hotel setting or something, maybe that doesn't need demand control, right? We're just constant volume there because that's either on or off, potentially, right?
Yep.
But if both controls are of the same nature, there's no confusion because that was something that would come up. We'd have demand control ventilation in one location with a touchpad, and then we'd go to a different place, potentially in a stadium or an arena venue, and now we've got switches. Well, those switches look very similar to the wall switches for lights, right? Or something of that nature. So it can be confusing, whereas if it's always that Accurex control panel and it's very clear that this is for the hood, that's really a great innovation.
Absolutely. And what it does too is it becomes easier on an install standpoint too. So, you know, even before we're talking about fully operations or anything like that, you know, you're going to get the same platform, like you said, no matter if you're going to be doing the DCV or if you're going to be doing a constant volume. So, from an install standpoint, much easier that way. You're going to have to really know one basic product, and then from a troubleshooting and maintenance standpoint after the fact too, becomes a lot easier. So you know,
because the faults will show up on that control.
The faults will show up on the control. So yeah, if you have something as simple as you know, like a temp sensor, you know, being clogged with grease or you know, something like that happens.
Could be something that the customer could read on that board, take care of themselves. As opposed to in the old days, you'd have to climb up into the ceiling or something and find the control and see which lights are flashing and count the number of flashes. Or not that Accurex systems work that way, but there's certain things in the kitchen that are operated that way, and it's kind of challenging for end users in some cases. Whereas if it's written out in text right on the control panel, right where you go to turn it on and off,
absolutely,
super helpful.
Absolutely, and yeah, whether they can take care of it themselves, but even if they can't, they are able to call the troubleshooting line. So on any of the Accurex equipment, they can walk around and they can find the phone number plastered countless times. So they can call up that troubleshooting number, get with any of our application engineers 24/7, and say, hey, I have XYZ issue. What do I do? And then, they can just go down that path right away to fixing that situation rather than, like you said, having to, potentially call somebody on a Friday night during mad rush saying, you need to get here. I have no clue what's going on. So just, tries to eliminate as much of the hassle and the question that we can through that.
So that control in a constant volume control, I'm familiar with the DCV control and the variable frequency drives and some of that, but in the constant volume control, is it still more of a time clock where the system is sensing heat and then firing the fan up for a period of time and then turning it off? Is that system still available, or is it more of a comparison where you've got a room temp stat and a temp sensor under the hood that's comparing temp and deciding if it should turn the fan on?
Yeah. So in a standard constant volume system, you're going to have two options basically to turn the system on, and that's going to be walking up and hitting that user interface on, and that's going to kick the system on, right? But just like in a DCV kitchen hood control, the constant volume has temperature sensors in it as well. So what that does is that's a digital temperature interlock there that's going to sense when that temperature, say a default setting, those can always be changed, but a default setting of 90 degrees underneath that hood, if that user interface isn't clicked to on, that temperature, that sensor is going to sense 90 degrees and kick that system on automatically. So it has that built-in fail-safe there, so that if somebody just forgets to do it, then it'll go, and then it'll continue to run until that time it goes underneath that temperature setting.
Okay.
So
will it have a runtime past that?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
It will.
Okay.
It will have a runtime past that.
Great. That's always the thing I think of.
Yeah.
It's important to have it turn on. Obviously, that's sort of the most important thing. But sometimes I think it's almost as important if someone inadvertently leaves something on and they leave, and in the distant past, the hoods could be turned off manually, and they would not turn back on until the fire system tripped. Right. But in an instance where we've got that interlock, we can guarantee that even though we've asked the fan to go off, it's going to say, the system's going to say, no, I'm not going to go off, right? And it's going to indicate probably on by temp or on by something, right?
Yes.
And indicate that this thing has to continue to run because, well, there's latent heat in these ovens, or hey, you forgot to turn, it's not going to tell you to turn range off, but it'll just at least keep running to make sure that the fire system isn't activated.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, a typical is 10 minutes. That can obviously be altered a little bit too, but like you said, you want to make sure that you vacate all of that hot air that's still potentially going on underneath there. And so
and
even
just gas too, right? Any carbon monoxide that could be coming off of those products is
Yes, yeah. And so, kind of talking a little bit about the safety factors there of just how that operation works, of just on, off, those types of things. What's also built in is the safety factors when it talks about fire protection, right?
Yep.
So say a fire instance happens, the fire suppression system dumps in the hood. There's going to be a couple of different sequences that happen here. So we're going to have the controls will automatically tell the exhaust fan to go 100%. We want to try to vacate as much of that smoke, that heat, everything that's underneath there. We're trying to get that out, and it's going to cut off the supply air too. So the makeup air, the DOAS, whatever type of unit that is.
Maybe it's closing a damper someplace or something. Just trying to keep that outside air from adding more.
Absolutely. We want to starve those flames of anything, and then probably one of the other biggest, and probably the biggest thing that happens here is all the appliances, gas, electric, is all shut off to the appliances. We don't want to have some sort of another startup flare of anything happening. Sure. So those types of things are all just built into those controls, and just an easy tie-in to that fire suppression system. We would love to continue the conversation with you around your specific needs. You can find your local Accurex representative or reach out to us directly at accurex.com or call 1-800-333-1400.